Hey everyone, Matt here from Dr. Running, and today we're going to do a full review of the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro Evo 2. So this is Adidas's ultimate super racing shoe. They have a whole Adizero line. This is the lightest, most aggressive, and most expensive of the entire group, and it's actually, as of this video, the most expensive and the lightest super racing shoe on the market for its stack height. First version was quite the shock to the running industry and consumers, where just the price tag, but also how insanely light this thing is, coming in, I think it was like 4.6 ounces for men's size 9. I wear size 10, so I'll talk about that in a second. But just insanely light, and they were able to back up some of the initial stuff with tons of world records, tons of wins at races in the elite division. So yeah, it definitely held up, at least in the elite category. For the recreational runner, it's a different story. And version 2 is the newest version of this, and they made quite a few changes that make this shoe feel very different compared to the first version. I think all of these are better, and we'll talk about what are the changes, how does this shoe ride, how does it fit, what's the stability like. We'll obviously talk about specs, we'll compare it to version 1, but then we're also going to have a conversation about biomechanics and who this is really appropriate for, because I think that's a really important conversation to have. So let's start off with specs. So my size 10 comes in at 5.2 ounces or 148 grams. That is exactly the same weight as my size 10 in the original version. The stack height is coming in at 39 millimeters in the heel, 36 in the forefoot for a 3 millimeter drop, much lower than the 39, 33 in the original version. So that low drop is definitely noticeable, but one of the big things that I noticed first putting the shoe on is that it actually has some bounce to the midsole. The Light Strike Pro Evo foam in the original felt incredibly light, but it didn't feel very bouncy underfoot. Honestly, felt, this is gonna sound very offensive, a little flat. Like I didn't like it for its ability to give me a bounce. Like the Adidas Adios Pro 4, Pro 3, way bouncier than version 1. Whereas when we got to version 2, especially the heel, there's a lot more compliance and resilience in the midsole, where especially when I land on my heel, which I'm a heel striker, I just get a lot more bounce and roll forwards off of this. It's a combination of factors. It's not just the foam feels a little bit bouncier, but it's also the lightweight and obviously the way more rockered ride. This shoe felt really, really good when turning over. This shoe feels really good rolling, and it feels just the forefoot rocker is really aggressive, much more prominent forefoot in this shoe, and it just rolls so much better. It's so much more efficient for me personally as you go faster. So more bounce in the midsole foam. It's not the bounciest foam, so it's not an Alpha Fly, it's not an Adios Pro 4. It's just super light, and it's just got a like moderate amount of bounce. Not as much as you might expect for a shoe that costs this much, but enough that it goes, oh, combined with the weight, it is really fast underfoot and feels great. Doesn't feel great running slow. I had to abandon a long run in this shoe because I was like, I just want to test this over longer miles. It was not stable enough in midfoot, and the magic doesn't happen at slower paces. Anything slower than like 6:30, 7-minute pace, this shoe is not special. It's just like, this is kind of awkward, doesn't feel good. What is it? When you start running faster than like 6-minute to 6:30 pace per mile, that's when it's like, oh, okay, I'm starting to see this, and the faster you go, the better it feels, to a degree. Now, this very rockered sole, this forefoot is really noticeable. You tip right over this thing. You got to get over initially what feels a little like a speed bump. It is a stiff shoe. There's a plate in here. There's no flexibility in this. It feels like kind of one of the original the Adios Pro 1, where it just felt like the toast of the forefoot rocker was really aggressive. You had to get over it. This balances out really well. I felt that initially, and then it just broke in and it rolls really nicely, heel to toe, very smooth, efficient ride. And that's what actually makes it feel better over longer distance, faster effort. So I've taken this for a track workout, a fartlek on the roads, a tempo run on the roads, some hill repeats, and a failed long run just because it didn't feel good enough and I was too unstable for me in the midfoot, like I said earlier. Everything felt really good. The first run felt really fast in the track. I was like, whoa, this feels good. Now I understand why this shoe is a thing. Turning over like low 5-minute pace felt really, really good. Second run, doing a fartlek, that didn't feel as good. It felt a little bit better when I got on my heel and was rolling a little bit through the shoe, and the tempo run is where it felt really good. So this shoe does best if you are a faster runner running like 10K to marathon pace. Not sprinting, but just running a good pace. You get into rhythm, holding it faster. Keep in mind, I'm running this with a stroller too, so that's extra challenging there, but it felt great on the tempo run and felt really good just locking into a pace and going faster. I am going to try to do a race. I apologize, I haven't got gotten a ton of chances to race this year because I've been so busy both collecting data. Saturday, Sunday are my data collection days for all my research, and life's been really, really busy. So hoping to get some more racing miles and going to try these on and see how it goes, but I'll have to report back in a later video. So ride, very rockered, some bounce, not the bouncy shoe, but it turns over really well and really efficient over longer distances. The outsole, this is my right shoe, is actually holding up pretty well. I am just beginning to tear through this at about 30 miles now. It's not fully off. It's much better than the original version, but obviously the shoe isn't meant to be super durable. Adidas used to say, at least in the first version, that it was supposed to last one training run and one marathon. That does make sense in terms of high performance. I will say it is getting better now that it's breaking it a little bit, so I think it will last longer than that. If you're light on your feet, you're going to get tons of miles on this. If you're hard on your feet, you are going to start to grind through this, but it is doing much better than version 1, which really wasn't able to handle that. I had to send my pair to David, and he ripped them on the trail, which is just what David does. So midsole, better. Outsole doing much better, still light, still much more grippy is what I've noticed immediately. I remember looking at the original version going, how is this supposed to grip? And it does have some sticky rubber. Version 2 just grips a lot better. The ribs here, grip track, grip wet road, grip road, much better. I would not take this shoe on trail. It's too fragile. It's not gonna handle anything, just don't do that. Road, track, nothing else, but it actually grabs the road really, really well, regardless of what's underfoot. Obviously, not with snow. I haven't tested in snow. We're getting into summer. That's not part of my testing right now. So great on that aspect. Obviously, really meant for elite athletes, people that are running faster. Slower runners are probably not going to benefit as much, and I'll talk about that in a second. But let's talk about stability, where in the original version, it wasn't bad, it wasn't great. This one, forefoot feels awesome. The sole flare, really aggressive rocker up front, actually makes and there's some very mild sidewalls that make the forefoot actually mildly guided, which is nice. Unfortunately, the midfoot is not guided. That's what kind of knocked me out of doing the longer run, other than the shoe just feeling awkward at slow paces, is this cutout, which is exactly the same one in version 1, just feels way more prominent because the shoe is much lower drop. That low drop is really noticeable. It's not zero, so it's not terrible, and there's still compression, and the rocker helps kind of make that a little bit more efficient. But for me, as someone who has tight calves, if I don't have enough motion in the front here for my talocrural or my ankle joint, I'm going to compensate with my subtalar joint, the joint underneath it, and that I'm going to pitch over the edge. So there's not really any supportive measures in the midfoot. If you need midfoot stability, this shoe is not going to work for you. And for me, I think I'm probably going to max this shoe out at like 5 to 10K efforts. I don't think I could take this for a half marathon because it's just not stable enough there. The heel is great for me. When I really get on my heel, it does, because it's so posterior lateral beveled here, it does keep me out, which is really nice, which I need. But then as soon as I get to the midfoot, it's too much. So if you have lateral instability or lateral sensitivities at the heel, this shoe probably won't work, as a lot of Adios or Adizero models kind of throw you out that way. The midfoot, though, is really biased. If you're a forefoot striker and you need mild guidance, this shoe is going to work great. But for everybody else, it's just not going to be that. And again, really emphasizing you got to have neutral mechanics and running faster for this shoe to be a really good option for you. The upper was really surprising. There is more volume than the first version. The first version was very low volume, to the point that I almost wondered, did I need a 10.5? It felt slightly short. I even got some chafing on my toes when I did try to take it up to 10 miles. And I was just like, it did finally break in. And I like the rest of the upper, but I just had trouble with that. Version 2 has more volume. It's the same length, but there's more volume, so you get less pressure in your toes. It's a fairly normal width. It's not super snug. It's not super wide either. It sits nicely in the middle, where this stuff hugs your foot really well. I did have to lock the laces down because there's no structure to this. So if you're turning in this, it will like wiggle on you a little bit. But once you lock it down just right, the upper just disappears. There is a small heel counter back here. For those that are sensitive, it didn't bother me at all. The upper is mostly flexible. Just be careful tightening laces, is obviously the tongue is super thin and slides quite a bit. You got to make sure you set that really, really well. But once you do figure out how to lock this, don't tighten it too much. It will put pressure on the top of your foot. So just all you need is a little bit, and it seems to lock down well. And as long as you're going forward, it's fine. But super light upper, you can see through it. Part of the reason this shoe is so light. Don't expect a lot of frontal or side to side. Security with this shoe is really meant to go forward, so you better not be walking around in the gym and trying like lateral movements or soccer or football and stuff. Don't do that, okay? So upper fit, stability, outsole, different than version 1. Just to summarize this stuff, lower drop, More moderate drop at 6. This shoe has a more snug, low volume upper. There's a little bit more volume in version 2 that just fits a little bit more, gives it a little bit more room. It's a little more comfortable with the toes, but you got to lock the upper down just a little bit more. In terms of stability, they're both neutral shoes. In the forefoot, the version 2 is better in terms of it just feels more aggressive, a little more sidewall action, like feels wider. It's not wider, it's the same width in the forefoot. But that increased stack height in the forefoot provides a little bit more cushioning, a little more aggressive roll through. But stability-wise, a little more aggressive over here. More stable in the forefoot, less stable in the midfoot and heel. If you got lateral bias issues, it's the same between the two of them. And then the midsole, there's more bounce over in version 2. I felt like there was less bounce in version 1, more rocker over here, kind of more flatter. This is just going to depend on your individual mechanics. Now, let's talk about some biomechanics and who this shoe is appropriate for, because I think this is really important to talk about, because when you throw a shoe out in the market that's $500, the first question is, okay, is this going to be worth it for everyone? And the answer is no. It is not worth it for the recreational runner. If your race pace is slower than 6:30 or 7-minute pace, this shoe is absolutely not worth it. The weight isn't going to give you the benefits. We know there's plenty of evidence that recreational runners and slower runners do not get the same benefits that faster runners do. If you have $500 you want to blow and you really, really want this shoe and you really want to run in it, fine. Go for it. You're just not going to get the same benefit that you would other shoes that might be a little bouncier, a little bit more durable, and be a little bit less aggressive. This is a very aggressive shoe, very stiff, not stable to the midfoot. You're probably going to do better with something that costs half this much and is going to give you a little better cushioning and a little bit better security and stability, okay? There are no stability super shoes at the moment, so I'm not looking for like posts and whatever. I'm just saying a little more stable, which is going to be helpful over 26.2 miles, 13.1 miles, whatever, okay? It's not a 5K shoe, even though that's as far as I can probably take it. It's meant to be the ultimate marathon shoe. For elite athletes, for sub-elite athletes, people running 240 marathons, running 230, 220, 210, yeah, that makes sense. If you got cash to blow and you want to really improve, like you really want the lightest possible shoe with this much stack height, again at the moment, there's a couple more coming from different companies, then yes, this might be worth it to you. The weight is one of the biggest factors that improves running economy, so having a shoe this light, for sure, it's gonna improve that. Is it the bounciest midsole? No, but if you're putting more force into it, you're probably gonna get more out of it, which is why I'm right on that cusp of like, I'm not an elite athlete, but I still have some turnover in my legs, so I'm getting a little bit, but faster runners are gonna get a lot more than I am gonna get out of this, and a lot more than recreational runners. So for most people, it's not worth it, but for the fast runner that can really compress the sole, really roll through this really quick, yeah, that weight might be worth it, but you just gotta have $500 to blow, and you have to consider you could buy other super shoes for half that cost, buy 2 for the price of 1. So the faster you are, probably the more worth it's gonna be. The other thing you gotta think about, when I say it's aggressive, what do I mean? A, for such a tall stack height, midsole is really narrow. Yes, Adidas does this little cutout right here just to save some weight, which is fine for most people if you have stable mechanics and you translate over the lateral side. If you don't, you're gonna go right over this, right? This foam is softer, it's gonna compress more, and so yeah, if you go over here, you're gonna collapse more. As you fatigue more, a lot of people will do that, so you gotta make sure that you can handle this tool for the longer miles, and you may not have that much time to do that, to figure that out, just because it's only meant to last 1 training run and 1 marathon. So not a lot of durability there for you to find that out. That's the other thing. And then the low drop and how aggressive the toe spring is the other thing you gotta make sure you can handle. So as you run long distances, yes, there's a rocker here. Rockered soles reduce the amount of stress on the ankle joint and the Achilles and the calf. However, as you fatigue, you're gonna get farther and farther back on your heel, and you do have to dig your way out of this. You gotta make sure you got really good calf strength, because even with the low drop, you still gotta power, with the rocker, you still gotta power out of that low drop, so it takes a lot of calf work and hip work. The other thing that I really noticed that I didn't notice as much in the original version is the amount of toe spring. And toe spring refers to the amount of extension your toes are held in right here. You see this top isn't flat. It's held up like this. Typically, we suggest that you find shoes where your toes can be held in a more neutral position, because when you hold them in a stretch position, when you hold anything in a stretch position, it's not always the greatest thing. unless you have some additional pathology that's worth considering. When you have your toes held up like that, you put pressure and tension not only on all the muscles on the bottom of the foot, some muscles that go up all the way into the calf, like some of your toe flexor muscles are lengthened. You also tighten up your plantar fascia. Now, is this going to give you plantar fasciitis? No, I can't say that for certain, but it does increase the stress through that because when you do this, it locks up the plantar fascia, which helps lock up your foot. That is good. That's something called the windlass mechanism, that when you're supposed to be able to supinate and toe off, when you go through toe extension, that naturally tightens up your plantar fascia, which helps stiffen your foot up so you have a stable platform, i.e. your foot, to push off from. You don't want your foot to be loosey-goosey and flexible when you're trying to push off and create power. You want that when you land and you shock absorb, but not when you're doing propulsion. So when you keep your foot in that position all the time, in certain people, that might create a lot of tension on the plantar fascia, and in some people, that might be irritable. I will say when I was first breaking the shoe in, it was tugging on my heel where the plantar fascia attaches, and I'm like, oh, I gotta see if I can get used to this. Fortunately, it did. I've been really working on my foot. My calf mobility has been really, really important recently, but I can still feel that tugging. So those that are sensitive to that, you just gotta know this is gonna put you in an artificial position, already with the rocker, super stack height, that's already obvious, but you just gotta make sure you have enough toe mobility that you can A, be set in that position, and that B, you have enough toe flexor strength that you can handle producing force in a lengthened position and being held there all the time. Certain people are going to do absolutely fine with that. Certain people are not. So just as something to pay attention to when I say aggressive, I'm not kidding. The last thing I need to talk about is something interesting about this shoe. A lot of super shoes have glued-in insoles. We get a lot of questions, and I wrote an article about the super shoes that can handle orthotics and the ones that can't. This one can't. If you notice, in some photos online from what I took, there's no insole. You actually just see the stitching right here. This is not a great angle to see this. I don't even know if you can see that. But there's no insole. So you're sitting right against the top part of the shoe. So A, do not run sockless in the shoe. The inner liner will rip you up. But also the stitching here is going to really, really rip up the bottom of your foot. So you need socks for sure. But because there's already it's higher volume than the last one, but it's a racing shoe, it doesn't have a ton of volume. This is not going to work with orthotics. Most super shoes don't because they're designed without those in mind, and there's already a plate. There's a lot of other factors. You can look at that article for a couple ones that might be able to handle that, but this is not this. It's not meant for people with stability needs. It's not meant for people running slower because it just doesn't feel awkward and you don't engage the shoe the way you need to. It's meant for people to run much faster and have money to blow or looking for the ultimate performance gains at that higher level. If you're a slower runner, you're going to get a lot more performance gains from training or from just getting any one of the other super shoes, or you might even get it from one of the super trainers, and we've talked about this before. But this is a very specific tool, and I'm going to say this again, it's not for everyone. Is it a great shoe? Yeah, I'm enjoying the miles in it. I'm going to take this until the outsole comes off, which probably will be soon, but that's another story. But it's a very cool shoe, and I feel very honored to be able to test this. But in doing that, it's my responsibility to go, this is not for everyone. There's a very specific population that should think about this. Most people, if they're looking for a super shoe and they want Adidas, should look at the Evo SL, which is a great training shoe. Should look at the Adios Pro 4, which is also a great shoe, and then the Takumi Sen 11, some of the other ones that are coming out there. Those are much better options unless you're really looking for the ultimate performance shoe and it matches you and your mechanics and your speed. So I hope that was helpful. I know it's a long review. I had a lot to say. I really want to be honest with all of you and help you figure out what works best for you. Not every shoe is going to work for you, which is the purpose of why we do these reviews, is helping you figure out what's going to work best for you. Please, in the comments below, let me know, do you agree or disagree? If you've tried this shoe, what do you think? Do you agree or disagree with some of the sentiments I've had? Looking at some of the things I've said about this shoe and faster and slower runners, do you agree or disagree? I'm not trying to be speedist. I'm trying to be honest with these shoes are developed with elite athletes in mind. They are not designed for slower speeds, and they're not designed with that in mind because you can't make a shoe that's super fast and super slow at the same time. You can't do both those at the same time. That's not a thing. So let me know in the comments below what you think, agree or disagree, and last but not least, really hope this helps. The whole goal of this is obviously to help you figure out what keeps you healthy, because I don't want you to need us. I want you to be able to figure this stuff out on your own. So I hope you can learn from this. We'll keep putting content out. We got a lot of stuff coming, but hope it helps.